We're making little blossom squares now, and these start in much the same way as the big blooms. So I've got my lemon yarn and a 4mm hook, and this time I'm going to chain 4 and slip stitch to make a loop. The reason I'm chaining 4 is because we've got more stitches to fit into the loop this time, and it just makes it easier to fit them in. So here's my chain 4, slip stitch under both loops of the first chain, pull through, and I'm going to chain 2, and that is my first treble crochet, and then I'm working over the tail, and I'm going to make 15 treble crochet into the ring, so we have 16 in total. So I have my chain 2, counts as my first treble crochet, and then 15 more, making 16 in total, and I'm just going to close the round by slip stitching under both loops of the first treble, snip, and then I've crocheted over my tail, so I can just give this a pull and it will just close up the centre of that loop nice and neatly. I can sew in my tails and I'm ready for round 2. Centre tail is dealt with, so I'm ready to start my petals, and these are very similar to the petals in the big bloom. I'm going to start by pulling up a loop of yarn in any one of the treble stitches and chaining 2. I hope you're all shouting at your screens, counts as the first treble crochet. So that's 1 treble crochet, and I'm going to make 7 more into the same stitch to form a petal. So this is the same as we did on the large bloom. I'm not counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's 8. So our chain 2 counts as 1 treble, and then 7 more, so that's 8 treble crochet. And this time we're going to skip 1 stitch and slip stitch. So in the big bloom we skipped 2, but in this one we're just going to skip 1. So I'm going to skip this stitch and I'm going to slip stitch into the next one. That's my slip stitch. And then I'm going to skip 1 stitch and 8 treble crochet into the next stitch. So I'm going to skip this one and 8 treble crochet into the next one, and I'm just going to repeat this 2 more times, so we have 4 petals around the centre. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, skip 1 stitch, slip stitch into the next one, and then repeat twice more. And when I get back to the beginning, I'll show you how to start the next round. So here's my last petal. I'm going to slip stitch, and then I'm going to go straight into the next round. So I'm going to put my hook under both loops of this first treble, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through. So that's my first double crochet, and then I'm going to do 6 more double crochet around the petal, so that's 7 in total. So 4, 5, 6, 7, and then as I did before, I'm going to slip stitch each side of the slip stitch in the round below. So slip stitch the same way we did before. So now we are going to do 7 double crochet, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then slip stitch each side of that slip stitch in the round below. And I'm going to repeat this on the next 2 petals. So that's my 7th double crochet on my last petal. 2 slip stitches, 1 each side of the slip stitch in the round below. And then to finish off, I'm just going to put my hook under both loops of that first double crochet we made and slip stitch to join, so I can fasten this off. So I'm going to just snip and pull through, and I'm going to sew in these tails, and then I'll show you how to turn it into a square. So my tails are all sewn in, and like I said before, it's entirely up to you if you leave sewing in your tails till the end. I just find it easier not to have them hanging around when I'm squaring up my squares, especially on the smaller ones. So I've got my background blue. I'm using the slightly lighter blue again so you can see my stitches, and this time we're going to start right in the middle here in the slip stitch. So it's directly above the slip stitch in the round below. So we've got the 2 slip stitches each side of this slip stitch in the round below, and I'm just going to pop my hook right into the middle between them. Pull up a loop and chain 2, and this counts as a treble crochet. And then this is very similar to the big bloom. We're just going to make gradually shorter stitches and then longer stitches just to fill in this corner and turn the blossom into a square. So the next stitch is a half treble, and then we have 2 double crochets, and then we have a half treble and a treble in the same stitch. So that's my half treble and my treble in the same stitch. So now we've got a nice straight edge, and this is our corner, so I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm just going to repeat this in the reverse order. So in the next stitch we have a treble followed by a half treble and then 2 doubles, a half treble, and then the treble crochet goes back in that space right in the middle, that next stitch between the slip stitches. So no skipped stitches on this one. And then we're going to do exactly the same thing again to square off these 3 corners. So I'll show you another one. So we've got a half treble, two double crochet, a half treble and a treble in the same stitch, oops, 2 chains, and then the same in reverse. So we've got a treble and a half treble in the same stitch. So there's my corner, 2 double crochets, a half treble, and then a treble right in the middle. And I'm going to repeat exactly the same stitch pattern to square off these 2 corners. This is my last half treble, and I'm going to finish the round by slip stitching into the top of this first half treble. So hook under both loops and slip stitch to join. So now we have 11 stitches on each side of our little square. And then the final round is double crochet, so chain 1, and I'm going to put my first double crochet right into this first stitch here, right at the bottom of my chain. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this time we only have 1 double crochet in the corner. So double crochet, 2 chains and double crochet to form the corner, and then 11 double crochets along this edge. Make sure you don't miss this first one. So that's 1, 2, 9, 10, 11. So we've got our corner stitch and 11, that's 12, and then 1 more in the corner, that's 13. So we now have 13 per side. I'm just going to finish this corner, so chain 2 and then 1 double crochet. So then we're going to have 11 more double crochet and 1 in the corner, so that's 13 on this side. And I'm going to do the same, and then when we get to this corner I'll show you how to fill in the gap. So I've got to the last corner. Each side has 13 stitches, so we started off with 5 double crochet and 1 in the corner, so that's 6. So I'm just going to turn this corner, so chain 2. So the first double crochet into the corner space, that's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and it's quite important to get the right number of stitches on each side because that will make it easier when we come to join them. And then I'm just going to finish off this square by popping my hook under both loops of the first double crochet, slip stitch, fasten off, and there's my little blossom square ready to have its tail sewn in. I've got my first colour yarn and my 4mm hook. I'm going to start with a slip knot, and this time I'm going to chain 5, and the tulips start in a slightly different way to the other flowers because they don't have a central ring. So there's my 5 chains, and I'm going to skip 2 chains and make a treble crochet in the 3rd chain. So remember, we don't count the chain on the hook, we count the ones below it. So 1, 2 skipped chains, and the 3rd chain I'm going to make a treble crochet under both loops of the chain. So I've got my skipped 2 chains, that counts as 1 treble. I've got a treble and I need to make a 3rd. So again, under both loops of the chain. So that's 3 treble crochet. And then the pattern says to make 6 treble crochet in the last chain. And that's 6. And then 2 treble crochet, and these go into the same chains as the previous 2 treble crochet, so into that bottom loop of the chain. And then our last treble crochet goes into the skipped chain at the bottom here. So I'm just going to put my last stitch into there. So there's our tulip centre, and then we chain 2 and turn, and this chain 2 counts as our first stitch. So I'm not going to put a stitch into here, I'm going to skip this stitch and make 3 more treble crochet. And then the pattern says to put 2 treble crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. So that's 1. So this is 2 trebles in the 4th stitch. And then we finish this side with 4 more treble crochet. 1, 2, 3, and our 4th one goes into this turning chain stitch here. There we go. So then we chain 2 and turn, and again this counts as our first stitch, so we're not going to put a stitch in here. So then we make 4 more treble crochet, and then the pattern says to make 2 treble crochet in each of the next 6 stitches. So this is my last 2. And then I'm going to finish off this side with 5 treble crochet. And then again my last treble crochet goes into this turning chain stitch. Can you see that? You can see the little loop at the top, and we just work into that. So to finish off this part of the tulip, we're going to put a double crochet edge along here that we're going to work our bobbles into. So start by chaining 1, and then I'm going to make 11 double crochet stitches along this top edge. So we start in this space between trebles, that's 1, and then I'm going to work into the stitch, that's 2, and into the space, 3, into the stitch, 4, and into the space, 5. So then my 6th stitch, the halfway point, I'm going to put right into the middle here, and then we'll go back the other way with our other 5 stitches. And then the last one in this space between trebles on the end, and there's a diagram in the pattern to help you with the positioning of these stitches if you need it. So I'm going to fasten off my lilac yarn, and now it's time to add our bobbles. I've sewn in the tails just to get those out of the way. I've got my second colour yarn, and I'm just going to flip my tulip over so that I've got the back facing me, the reverse side. We're going to work our bobbles onto the back side, and they're going to pop out on the front. So I'm going to start by joining my yarn in the first double crochet. So I'm going to pull up a loop and chain 1, and this doesn't count as a stitch, and then I'm going to double crochet in the same stitch, and we're going to use this first double crochet stitch later to join our squaring round to. So I'm going to make a bobble now. So to do that, I yarn over, put my hook into that same stitch and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and I'm going to do this 3 more times. So yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. So now I've got 3 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over. So I've now got 4 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. So now I've got 5 loops on my hook, and now I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 5 loops to finish that bobble. And now my next stitch is a double crochet, and it goes into the next stitch. So double crochet into that stitch, and that just anchors the bobble down. So if we now look at the right side, we've got a bobble sticking out on the right side of the tulip, and then I'm just going to alternate between bobbles and double crochet stitches along this edge. So we have 6 bobbles with double crochets in between, and we end with a bobble in this stitch. So I'm just working my last bobble stitch, my 6th bobble, and then to finish off this row and finish off the bobble, I'm just going to make a double crochet stitch in the same stitch as the bobble. So just 1 double crochet stitch in there and fasten off. So this is what it looks like now. This is the back. So I've got a double crochet stitch at the start, just here, and then I've got my alternating bobbles and double crochet stitches, and then it finishes with a double crochet stitch on the end, and that's this one here. And these 2 double crochet stitches at the start and the finish will be hiding behind the bobbles, and that's okay because we're going to use those to join our squaring round to, and it's going to pull the squaring round under the bobbles, and that's what's going to make the bobbles stand out from the blanket. I've got my background colour yarn now, and I'm going to join it by pulling up a loop under that last double crochet stitch that we just made. So that very last stitch before we fastened off, I'm going to pull up a loop, chain 1, and this doesn't count as a stitch, and then I'm going to make 1 double crochet into the same stitch. And now we're going to make a corner, so chain 2, and the second stitch of the corner goes into the top of the bobble. And if you have a look at this edge, you can see the large V's that are the top of the bobble and the smaller V's that are the top of the double crochet stitches. So large V, top of bobble, small V, double crochet stitch. So my first double crochet is going to go into the top of the bobble, and we're going to make 11 double crochet stitches along this top edge. So my next one goes into the double crochet stitch, and then my next one goes into the top of the bobble all the way along. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 11, so that last stitch in the top of the bobble. And then it's time for a corner again, so I'm going to chain 2, and then my first stitch of this side goes into that double crochet. So under both loops of that first double crochet we made at the beginning of the row. And then we're going to make 10 more double crochet stitches down this side, because each stitch has 11 sides, 11 stitches, not 11 sides. So the next stitch goes in the same stitch as the bobble, and then 4 more double crochet. So the first one in this first treble, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the next stitch has 2 double crochet, and then the next stitch has a half treble and a treble. So half treble, treble, and the last stitch of the side is a treble crochet. So now we're going to make a corner, so chain 2, and then I'm going to treble crochet and half treble into the same stitch. So treble and half treble, and then our next stitch is a half treble, and then 5 double crochet, and a half treble, and then a half treble and a treble in the same stitch. So now we're going to turn the corner, so I'm going to chain 2 and a treble in the same stitch. So this is the reverse of the other side. And then the next stitch has a treble and a half treble, and then 2 double crochet, and then 5 double crochet to finish off the side. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and the last one goes into the bottom of the bobble, so the same stitch as the bobble. And then to finish off this side, I'm going to slip stitch under both loops of our first treble crochet. So don't fasten off, we're going to carry straight on into the last round. So I'm going to chain 1, and this doesn't count as a stitch, and then double crochet into that same stitch, and then I'm going to work into the corner space we made. So that's double crochet, 2 chain, and double crochet, and then I'm going to work 12 more double crochet stitches along this edge, so I have 13 on the side. So that's 2, 3, 10, 11, 12, and then the 13th is in this 2 chain corner space, and then I'm going to chain 2, double crochet in the same space, and then work round so I have 13 double crochet stitches on each side. So the pattern says after the corner to DC in the next 10 stitches, so that's my 10th stitch. So to finish off the side, I'm going to slip stitch onto both loops of my first double crochet. So fasten off, and there is my tulip square complete with its little popping out bobbles.